Hi, and I am honored today to continue with you the story of Job. Last week's sermon title was Job's Wisdom in Lament. And the sermon today, the title is A Bigger Picture, the Ancient of Days. So what I want to do is read from Wikipedia on the Ancient of Days. Ancient of Days is a name for God in the book of Daniel. The title Ancient of Days has been used as a source of inspiration in art and music, denoting the Creator's aspect of eternity combined with perfection. So along with the reading from the book of Job today, there are also other Bible readings from the traditional church calendar, and they have us looking at Hebrews chapter 10 and Mark chapter 35, and we'll look at those in a bit. But I want to talk about Pastor Dennis and his message to us last week about the power of lament, the wisdom of lament. It comes out of tremendous suffering. And Job's wife planted a huge seed of calling out God. And calling out God was in the essence of the Negro spiritual. And we learned about his grandmother, nicknamed Big Mama. And one of the things she often said about God is a heavy load sharer. So we're going to see this in Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. Every high priest is selected from among the people and is appointed to represent the people in matters related to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant or are going astray, since he himself is subject to weakness. This is why he has to offer sacrifices for his own sins as well as for the sins of the people. And no one takes this honor on himself, but he receives it when called by God, just as Aaron was. In the same way, Christ did not take on himself the glory of becoming a high priest. But God said to him, "You are my son. Today I have become your father." And he says in another place, "You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." And so here is verse 7, which is the section I emphasize because it mentions suffering. During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverent submission. Son though he was, he learned obedience from what he suffered. And once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him. And so what I'm doing is looking to build on what we've already heard about suffering, the wisdom, the power of lament. And so from there, we now get Job's three friends showing up on the scene right after Job's wife speaks to him and plants that seed. And we commonly refer to those three friends as Job's miserable comforters. And their point is God is righteous. And so, Job, you must have done something horribly wrong to have all these horrible things happening to you. And the next 28 chapters of the book of Job are them going back and forth with Job with the same argument, just in different words. Job saying he's in darkness. He doesn't know why this is happening to him, and he wants an answer from God. And his friends are saying, you must have done something wrong, and so come up with it. Going back and forth for 28 chapters for Job must have been its own kind of suffering. But then a new person arrives on the scene named Elihu. And Elihu begins to speak in chapter 32. And Elihu says, look, I'm young. I have been respectfully listening to you, but now I've got something to say. And what he does is he puts them all on blast for the next 5 chapters. And so I want to go back to the reading for today, Job chapter 38. But I want to finish what Elihu says and then go straight into chapter 38. Tell us what we should say to him. We can't present our case due to darkness. Should someone inform him that I wish to speak? Or would anyone say he wants to be devoured? For now no one can look at the sun. It is bright in the sky. The wind has passed and cleared away the clouds. From the north comes golden light, the awesome splendor of God. As for the Almighty, we can't find him. He is powerful and just, abundantly righteous. He won't respond. Therefore, people fear him. None of the wise can see him. Then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind. Who is this darkening counsel with words lacking knowledge? Prepare yourself like a man. I will interrogate you, and you will respond to me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you know. Who set its measurements? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring tape on it? On what were its footings sunk? Who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang in unison and all the divine beings shouted? Who is wise enough to count the clouds? And who can tilt heaven's water containers so that dust becomes mud and clouds of dirt adhere? Can you hunt prey for the lion or fill the cravings of lion cubs? They lie in their den. They lie in ambush in their lair. Who provides food for the raven when its young cry to God and move about without food? So that's the last verse for today's reading from Job. The story stops here until next week. Now, it is a happy ending. I won't say how that comes about, so there's no need for a spoiler alert. But now I want to go back to Hebrews again and look at glory this time instead of suffering. From Hebrews chapter 10. And no one takes this honor on himself, but he receives it when called by God, just as Aaron was. In the same way, Christ did not take on himself the glory of becoming a high priest, but God said to him, "You are my son. Today I have become your father." C.S. Lewis from England is one of the most well-known writers and theologians in church history. He's known for the children's books, the Chronicles of Narnia. Aslan is not safe, but good. That's a classic line from it. And one of his sermons is titled, "The Weight of Glory." And here's an excerpt from it. Shockingly, Christian writers and theologians speak approvingly of glory as fame, not in the sense of approval from fellow creatures, but in receiving a good report or appreciation or approval by God. And this turns out to be a scriptural idea. Matthew chapter 12. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. No one can enter heaven except as a child. And nothing is so obvious in a good and humble child as his great and undisguised pleasure in being praised. The humblest, most childlike, most creaturely of pleasures is pleasure of the inferior, a child before its father, a pupil before his teacher, a creature before its creator. Obviously, this lawful pleasure of praise can quickly turn into the deadly poison of self-admiration. But can we not detect in our experience a very, very short moment when this satisfaction of having pleased those whom we rightly love and fear was pure? And if that is the case, we can contemplate the redeemed soul, learning that he has pleased God, free from vanity and the miserable illusion that this is his own doing. To please God, to be a real ingredient in the divine happiness, to be loved by God, not merely pitied, but delighted in, as an artist delights in his work, or a father in a son. All of this seems impossible. A weight or burden of glory, which our thoughts can hardly sustain. But so it is. And so now I want to connect this word glory to another one of our readings for today, which is Mark chapter 10. So here's how the story starts, and then I'll read the climax of it from the Bible. So two of the disciples, James and John, they come up to Jesus and they say, when you come into your glory, we want to be sitting on the left side of you and on the right side of you. And Jesus' reply to them basically is, you don't know what you're talking about. So the other disciples heard that this took place and they got upset. And so here's what Jesus says to all of them. You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Okay, now everything I just said is an introduction to what I'm now going to say, followed by a photograph. So I don't know how many people know this, but our band, of course, is named El Dorado. El Dorado means the golden, and gold is the biblical color symbol for glory. Now, when Mandy first came here, she found out that our first location back in the 1800s was in the El Dorado Saloon. And in 2012, the El Dorado Lofts opened up with the El Dorado Bar in the basement. This is on Spring Street, just south of 4th. And Mandy tried to see if we could meet there, but the space wasn't available. Now, Mandy shared with us a few months ago a video that opened annual conference called Welcome to Tongvaland. Now, a couple weeks ago, I got an email listing a bunch of upcoming events, and one of them was on Indigenous Peoples Day, which was last Monday. I never heard of the nonprofits doing the event, but I noticed the location was 410 Spring Street. One profit's called Transformative Arts, and the other nonprofit is called the Chapter House. Now, the Chapter House is a group of Native American female artists from around the country looking for a physical space in Los Angeles. Transformative Arts is an artist nonprofit that just took over this 410 Spring Street space the beginning of this year. Their public event on Indigenous Peoples Day was the grand opening of Transformative Arts, hosting the Chapter House in this 410 Spring Street space for the next month. Along with a Transformative Arts nonprofit organization website, there is also a definition in Wikipedia. And here's what Wikipedia says. Transformative arts is the use of artistic activities such as storytelling, painting, and music making to precipitate constructive individual and social change. The individual changes affected through transformative arts are commonly cognitive and emotional. This results from the way participation in a creative process and pursuit of an artistic practice can promote a critical reevaluation of previously held beliefs, accompanied by unfamiliar feelings, which alters perception of the world, oneself, and others. The social changes affected through transformative arts occurs when this altered perception manifests in new ways of interacting with others. So I went to the opening on October 11th, Indigenous Peoples Day, and took a picture. But before we look at it, I want to go back and highlight 3 things. Mandy played a video for us called Welcome to Tongvaland. That's number 1. Number 2, again, here is the definition of transformative arts. Transformative arts is the use of artistic activities, such as storytelling, painting, and music making to precipitate constructive individual and social change. The individual changes effected through transformative arts are commonly cognitive and emotional. This results from the way participation in a creative process and pursuit of an artistic practice can promote a critical reevaluation of previously held beliefs accompanied by unfamiliar feelings, which alters perception of the world, oneself, and others. The social changes effected through transformative arts occurs when this altered perception manifests in new ways of interacting with others. That was number 2. And so here's number 3, which is how we began. I'm going to read from Wikipedia, Ancient of Days. Ancient of Days is a name for God in the book of Daniel. The title, Ancient of Days, has been used as a source of inspiration in art and music, denoting the Creator's aspects of eternity combined with perfection. Now let's go to the photograph.